and we can do a few of our administrative items to get going.
Okay, great. I just started the recording and I'll run through the roll. So Vaughn Jones or DFPC representative? Okay, all right, not today. Amy Moyer.
Here.
Good morning, Amy. You said John Ring is unavailable on furlough. Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally.
Present.
Morning, Commissioner. Brett Wilk.
Hello.
Morning, Brett. And Esther Duke.
Present.
Good morning. Great. And it's wonderful. We have a lot of other people on the call, so I'll just take note in the notes too of everyone else who's joined us because it's nice to see a big meeting. So we do have quorum, Amy.
Great. Thank you, Courtney. So I think the first item that we need to cover is approving the August 18th, 2025 meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve.
And I can second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. I have a quick agenda amendment. Courtney and Brett, I thought it might be helpful just to share a sneak peek at the one-pager for the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. I know you two have been carrying the load while I've been out on vacation, but if you think it's, I think I have still a little bit of a mock-up version, but we're pretty close to getting that one-pager complete. And I can share, let me see if I can share my screen and we can give folks just a quick update.
I have it up if you don't.
Do you mind sharing it? Let's see. You just might be quicker than me.
No, it's asking me to change some settings. So
Let me see. I can share it this way, I think. Can folks see the just quick snapshot of the one pager now?
Yeah.
Great. So this is just, we've got a few last changes, but this is meant to be just an additional tool for folks to better guide people to the Colorado Forest Resilience Planning Guide. Brett and Courtney, do you guys want to give any update on a few of the last changes? And then I had a question for the group. I think especially since Laura's here too, whether we need to add to a future meeting, revisiting just how we can drive folks to this planning guide. But hopefully this one pager is an additional step because we have a lengthier 4-page summary. We have the document itself. So we'll be equipped with a few different options to get some traffic here.
yeah, maybe I'll give a quick update. First, you can see at the bottom, the American Property Casualty Insurance Association did the layout for us. So we submitted text. They chose some pictures and made it look in this glossy format. So thanks a lot for them. Through the council, they offered to support that. Yeah, most of the changes, there were a couple sort of capitalize this letter, don't capitalize that letter sort of changes, but there's any sort of substantive ones, the goal of this one pager, we heard feedback from like county commissioners and state legislators that our 4-page summary was very dense and not something that they would encourage them to go to the guide. So we tried to make a 1-pager, had more pictures, and some of the other changes, that first sentence on the top that's highlighted in purple, build an inclusive science-informed collaborative that leads to action. If we want to have the guide be seen as a resource for these legislators, policymakers, funders, so like the slight change that I suggested is build inclusive science-informed collaboration that leads to action. We want to encourage collaboration between the resource allocators, the policymakers, and the collaboratives. It's not just a document for the collaboratives on the ground to use. So some slight tweaking of words in that way on a couple sentences to make it appeal to those legislators and funders, and have them see it as a resource more for them. So that, and then our latest discussion is about the logos. And Courtney, I don't know if you want to share where you landed on this. Is a Forest Health Council produced document. So does it get a DNR logo or state of Colorado seal on it, or no logos? We landed on no logos, but do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I think this is something that, the council is still a relatively new organization. It does not have its own logo. Maybe that's something we will consider doing, is getting it a state branded Forest Health Council logo. But since that does not exist at this time, we decided to remove all logos from this document. And that actually is in line with the 4-pager, which also has no logos. And we think that the little disclaimer at the bottom that the Forest Resilience Planning Guide is a product of the Forest Health Council was sufficient. So that sentence will link to the Forest Health Council website, and we thought that gave credit appropriately to the council for the development. And on that page, you'll see all of the organizations that went into the development of the guide. We just could not fit all of the logos on this piece of paper.
Cool. Thanks for that. So that's kind of the updates. I guess I'll share. I think that's fine to have the text of this was produced by the Forest Health Council. I wonder if just putting like the seal of the state of Colorado or something to give it some weight when people see it. They know like this is from a committee, but I don't know how that works. I don't think it's worth delaying this over. I guess I would be curious to hear feedback from others. I don't know if we have any. We do have Commissioner Shattuck McAnally. If there's any commissioners or state legislatures, like, do you think this is an improvement? Would those kind of people be interested in seeing it? Or anyone else with thoughts along those lines?
I know Jody's service is spotty, so she might not be able to see it, but we are nearing the finish line to be able to share this around. And Laura, I know you had mentioned just CDR hosting a training. Is there anything you wanted to share just of what's been in the works in giving an overview of the guide? And you mentioned, potential roadshow could be useful.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you all know it's something we're kind of highlighting in CDR runs a public training on facilitation, engagement, and collaboration. We're kind of bringing it back annually after a break from COVID times. But this is one of the things we're kind of highlighting of an example of how it can look in a specific context to build collaboration. So that will be highlighted to around 30 people this week across different state agencies. And I think a roadshow is always just like a great way to bring the information to people who can spread it to their networks even further. So if there's a way I can support that kind of effort, I'm more than eager to support it.
Thanks, Laura. Esther, go ahead.
I'm not sure how this is being shared, if it's all digitally or if there's print. versions. If there are, then I would recommend putting a QR code in the upper right hand corner, because print version, your links aren't gonna work, and it will make it easier for people to get to the full document.
That's a good suggestion, Esther, and I think there's that open space that it would fit nicely.
Mhm.
Courtney, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes. Just around, thinking about the roadshow and dispersal, I know the Partners in the Outdoors Conference is accepting applications for full-length presentations, but also thinks that they have lightning talks, which are just 10-minute presentations on something if they want to get the word out about something. I was imagining, should the 30-year vision have a lightning talk or a presentation? Should the Forest Resilience Planning Guide have a lightning talk or presentation? The deadline for those is this Sunday at midnight. So it's very soon. And I'm not sure if anyone from this group is interested. I think I would be interested in supporting that, especially a lightning one, which would be rather brief. But I wanted to throw that in there as another opportunity for getting the word out about this.
Courtney, would it make sense to combine those and kind of just be like an update on the Forest Health Council? Here's the vision, here's this resource.
Yeah, I think that would be really a useful bundle to share with people.
Courtney, do you have any recommendations of what we would need to do to submit the, abstract for that? Is that something DNR or maybe Christina, since you were on Colorado State Forest Service, could help support? And then we could identify a speaker, whether it's somebody from the council or staff supporting the council.
I'm not sure about the lightning presentations, what those require. I know I have a copy of the questions that are required for a full presentation. COSWAP is putting one together. I'm actually going to be in this training that Laura mentioned. So this week, sort of all of this week. So I don't think DNR has the ability to support on a full proposal. Perhaps I'm willing to check to see how big the lightning proposals are. If those are much shorter, I think that would be something that wouldn't be too hard for me to do.
Courtney, let me know how I can help too.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Just as far as the roadshow, I would propose that it's more important to have focused meetings with leadership at agencies, state legislatures, county commissioners, those sorts of people, federal agencies, about how they can use it as well. I think people on the ground are more familiar with these frameworks, and getting right in front of those people. The next time we have this, Dan Gibbs has a great quote on there. He says, "This is great for communities to use." The next time he has a quote on this, I would love for it to say, "I am excited to use this in my decision-making with the DNR." How do we get in front of people like that so they understand it? I think that's the big challenge and where we can make the biggest impact. So I'd be happy to work on some of those.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Brett. Courtney, why don't you, if you're able to send either to me or the committee the information on the Partners in the Outdoors Conference, and if we are able to pull together, I think a lightning round is probably the best fit for this topic in association with that conference. So I'm happy to potentially support, figuring out what we might need to get a spot there. And then I think next month would be a good time for this committee to revisit just some strategies to put some oomph behind the planning guide and make sure it's out there. And also, maybe a good segue just to keep moving on our agenda. Julie, this could be a good resource to share with the work partners and make sure that they're aware, and if there was interest in just kind of a lightning presentation to that group too, in terms of why it's useful, what its point is, and maybe how it can help support some of those efforts. That could be a good opportunity too. Does somebody else have their hand up? Sorry, I can't see everybody. I'll stop presenting. Oh, go ahead, Allison.
Amy, I didn't put my hand up, but I just wanted to respond to Brett that if we want to work on some more personalized or other details from the DNR, as we would like to be using this or are using this in our programs, Brett, why don't you reach out to me and let's work on that together.
Awesome. Love it.
Great. Well, great. I'm glad to kind of rejuvenate our efforts with the planning guide. I know that's been a big topic for this committee, and it's a useful tool that we can make sure, remains visible to folks that can use it. But why don't we turn to just a quick update on work and keep that at the forefront of this committee as that group gets going. And I think we had Julie present at our last meeting to give us an update of what that effort is. And there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for this committee and the Forest Health Council to work alongside those efforts as they move forward. So Allison and Julie, since you're here, I was mostly going to turn it over to you all just to give kind of a quick summary for folks that might not have been at our last meeting of what work is and how it's beginning to develop its structure and some of its core goals in terms of identifying sustainable funding opportunities, just to keep us thinking about where there are areas of overlap that we can support that effort and vice versa. So Allison, if it's okay, I'd love to turn it over to you and Julie just to kind of support a quick update here. And I'm happy to tag team too.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And I'm sorry, I've been pulled in a few directions today. So I invited Christina to represent, but then I also just heard that we all had to rearrange our schedules. So if it's okay, let's start with Julie to just sort of bring that high level discussion really quick, and then maybe some agency focus right after as well. So Julie, would you mind starting?
Great.
Sure, and I will say I didn't plan anything formal for this. What I will share really quick in the chat, I'm just going to put a couple links that I can share with you as overviews. I'm having trouble finding the chat on Google Meet as usual. There it is. So a fact sheet and also a newer, still kind of drafty FAQs document, which I don't mind sharing. Which might hit on some of the things we hear about often, including, hey, what's the relationship or difference between the FHC and work? But just really quick primer for those who maybe missed the last time or just need a refresher. The Wildfire and Watershed Initiative for Resilient Colorado is a private-public network really focused on scaling sustainable funding solutions for wildfire and watershed work in Colorado. And so funding is the key focus. We're looking at both public and private funding opportunities and how to pursue those and help others become more aware of them as well, including statewide public funding opportunities, local public funding, private public funding, and then also looking at how forest restoration economy opportunities could help offset the costs of stewardship treatments and therefore bring down that total need that we know is out there to deal with priority acres in Colorado. So that's just a really quick snapshot of what it is. We just see it as complementary to and hopefully helping to advance some of the work of the Forest Health Vision for Colorado, particularly the funding bucket of it, and providing a forum, just a larger forum and one that's kind of come together in its own way to bring folks who are interested in solving this funding problem. So we've been doing a lot on those 4 strategies since my last update and just kind of trying to move the needle. I think Ben's going to share a little bit more later on some aspects of that, but I won't go into details right now. Let me just turn it to Allison and Christina, knowing that they both have schedule constraints, and then I'm happy to come back for more if desired.
Christina, do you want to go?
Am I just sharing my thoughts about the group? Okay. So the group, I think, has been evolving. on what their focus has been. So I think originally the focus was how to get private industry financially committed to this work. And so over time, we've focused on where that funding would go. So if it would go to, let's say, National Forest or the U.S. Forest Service, then that kind of evolved because of the federal government and politics there. I'm not going to get into that. And then so the group has talked a lot more about kind of local funding initiatives at the state and county level. I think that that's been really great. And I feel like that's really where I see a lot of opportunity. And there's still this piece of how to get industry, I think, engaged in funding as well. So I appreciate that the group's been focused on funding more at the state and local levels and thinking about how to get industry excited. One thing that I feel like this group has going for it is I do feel like there's several groups that form like this. Like over the years, we've seen kind of the same folks around the table having the same conversations. But what I like about this group is it seems like the leadership at the table is more engaged and I think more interested. And it's been the first time where I feel like we're actually talking about a state ballot initiative or like county initiatives. So I think that that's really exciting. I see a lot of opportunity there. What we would go to the ballot for, not really sure at this point in time. I think that there's still a lot of work to do with this group on identifying what we would actually be asking for. So yeah, just looking forward to, we're very engaged with this group, and I know very much appreciate Northern Water and Denver Water for their participation in Excel and Colorado Forum, and just, yeah, a lot of momentum, I think, with leadership with some of those entities that I'm hoping will carry us forward into something that's meaningful out of this group. So thanks.
Thanks, Christina, and thanks, Julie. And I'll just add a little bit more from the DNR's perspective and maybe dive into a little, just a few questions to you all. But I am very sorry. I have kind of a hard stop at 12:30. I've been asked to attend the Colorado Fire Commission today on behalf of Director Gibbs, so I'm going to have to hop off. But just adding on to what Christina is saying, and then please, if you haven't seen the fact sheet or the FAQ that Julie put in the chat, it's really, as this group has been evolving, it's been great to put the framing around this group as a complementary effort. And what started as a smaller group about a year ago has now just continued to expand and have opened doors for continued conversations on these priorities. And as we focus back on what Julie said at the beginning, it really starts and it is really about sustainable funding for forest health and watershed health and how do we get there. And in addition to that, though, in the priorities that this group has identified and continues to talk about, one resounding conversation and priority that continues to come up is the forest restoration economy part of this. So this group, as we talk and we think about funding, I just think I'm grateful to be in these conversations and in this movement because it's not blind to what the idea of getting the possibility of having that large sum of money that we believe we need to advance our forests and our watersheds to where they need to be. We're not just talking about getting money for the implementation part. We're also working on the hard discussions of the economics piece of this as well, the industry folks, the who is doing this work, right? And so those are hard conversations that we all continue to have and evolve. And I just very much appreciate that we were at the table thinking in the moment, but also for the long term of how, if we were to get anywhere from 150 to 200 million. And when I say we, I don't mean the DNR. I'm talking about the we as like the state in its entirety. That we includes the big, broader we. It's how it's that we know that just that doesn't come with ease, and we have workforce and other needs that need to be addressed as well. And so it's really all encompassing. And so I just want to add that perspective, because I find that the way that I think about the work group is it's like the boots on the ground right now. It's not the boots on the ground cutting the trees. It's the boots on the ground asking the really hard questions. Well, what does that really mean? Or how do we do that? Because as a state agency, many of us, not just state agencies in this group, we're not allowed and should not be part of ballot initiatives. We cannot be, right? So as we know, we have some needs on how do we get funding for the state. We also know some of us cannot be a part of those discussions. So having this diverse group of nonprofits and utilities and many other and commissioners and all of that and state agencies on this, it's really helpful to be able to talk about everything as a whole.
Yeah, thanks for that, Allison. I think there are lots of opportunities to stay connected with where work heads and some of the efforts there. And I think there are a lot of complementary opportunities for the Forest Health Council and this committee of, we've been spending a lot of time over the last year thinking about these pinch points related to leveraging resources of capacity and match and timelines and funding for early stages of readiness, that I think still moving forward on that starts to work towards some of the enabling conditions should local or state ballot initiatives move forward, or other funding opportunities that provide sustainable funding. So I just appreciate your perspective on how the agencies are involved. And thank you, Julie, for letting us put you on the spot to give an update. And certainly an area for us to keep an eye on where we can either lend support or provide a reciprocal opportunity between the Forest Health Council and that effort. But any questions before we move on to the Forest Collaborative Summit? And thank you, Allison. I know you have to jump.
It's okay. I just want to add that Julie and the work group presented to the legislative committee just earlier this fall. I think they were one of the first presentations. So that was great to sort of start that process with a work presentation. But as Julie and Christina both said, like if that was 2 months ago, right? This is a dynamic group. And so that's where I was, thinking, Amy, maybe a few of us, because Esther's in this group and others in this room, like we could provide an update, and you obviously, we could have maybe a mini update during the Leveraging Resources Committee meetings if you want, just to keep everyone who isn't attending these meetings up to date.
I think that would be great, Allison, and I can work with you or others to identify just what that looks like. There's a lot of opportunities for overlap and dovetailing efforts. So let's kind of keep putting that on the agenda, and we can work towards what does that look like.
Thank you. And thank you all.
Any other last questions on work before we transition? Okay, so we're going to turn it over to, we've got John and Audrey and Christina. Thank you so much for being here. And Esther as well, to give a little bit of a debrief on the Forest Collaborative Summit. I know there were a few sessions on creative funding and maybe some other conversations to fill this group in and have a discussion around maybe some of the outtakes of that. So John or Esther or Audrey, I'm not sure who to turn it over to first, but happy to give you the floor and fill us in.
Great. I'm gonna guide us through this. Amy, thank you so much, and all of you on the committee for joining us. And then several of us are going to present. Let me see. I'm gonna share my screen and the presentation itself. And then let me see if I can get this right. Let's see if slideshow. Can you all see that?
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to get us started, and I'll actually start us at the top. And then I'm going to pass it along to all of these folks who are listed here as presenters. So we're going to give an overview of the Forest Collaborative Summit and key takeaways, and we particularly focused on key takeaways that are relevant to this committee. As you can see, just on the list of presenters here, this is very much a co-produced effort, and the summit itself is co-produced. I think half the people on this call right now participated in one way or another in helping put the summit together. Thank you to all of you. I will dive right into, what, for those of you not familiar with the summit, what it is and what we do. So the summit is, we do this annually now. It's actually been happening for a decade-ish. And the Colorado Forest Collaboratives Network took over hosting the summit about 4 years ago. But as I mentioned, we do this in partnership with a bunch of different organizations who all get a lot of credit for helping make this meaningful. The purpose of the summit is to really connect place-based groups from all across the state with learning and issues and policy, and especially connecting them with each other. So the participants include a lot of people who are on the ground, cutting trees, engaging with their communities from all across the state, but we put a lot of effort as well into involving leadership in this event, so that we can make sure that these groups that are dispersed across the state also have an opportunity to interact with and hear from statewide leadership as well, and also U.S. Forest Service leadership. So a little bit more on that soon. We hear consistently about two things that people really love about the summit, and one is, and the key theme we hear is, there are awesome people that show up, and it's just a fabulous opportunity to connect with people directly. Especially people from smaller organizations say that it really helps them know that they are part of something that's much bigger than just their small organization's efforts. So great people and great connections, but also great learning. The learning includes pulling from all of this stuff. So we've already mentioned the Forest Resilience Planning Guide and work, but also the 2055 vision, and also pulling from that Future of the Forest Summit and the American Forest Congress that just happened earlier this year, and including also the guidance framework for tribal collaboration. So all of this stuff we brought forward into the summit as we were planning the content, and we shared all of this with summit participants as well. So, kudos to this committee as well, because you've been very involved in several of these elements, and the summit was one of many opportunities to kind of knit these pieces together, and you'll see that thread throughout as well. So the agenda, we've got somebody speaking on both day one and day two here to give you a brief overview of what each of these major agenda items consisted of. So day one was a field trip to allow folks to really see work that's happening on the ground in specific places. We also did a workshop on communications and storytelling. Audrey's going to fill us in on what that day one looked like. And then day two is really the working session. We did it in the Golden Community Center. The morning was on a series of issues, communications, and community engagement and policy changes and things of that sort, where the morning session was really working through those things and trying to come up with some converging ideas and key takeaways. Chaska is going to lead us through that conversation today. And then as has been mentioned, the afternoon session is on getting creative with funding, which is very much what the work is focused on right now. And Esther's going to speak to that, but Ben, you've already seen is on this call as well and can chime in there as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Audrey.
Thank you. Is the microphone picking me up okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Audrey Miles Cherney. I am the Upper South Platte Partnership Watershed Coordinator, and my position is housed within the Colorado State Forest Service. It was my honor to help support the summit, and I was involved directly with helping support the field trip and workshop of the day. Go ahead and advance the slides, John. So the first day of the summit consisted of a half-day field trip. We visited 3 sites, 2 watersheds, and had almost 50 people representing 30 agencies and offices from across Colorado State participating in this. Field trips, as you may be aware and appreciate yourself, gives an opportunity for entities to collaborate and discuss the challenges, opportunities, successes that sometimes are specific to a local area, but also are overarching challenges and opportunities, and that can be meaningful to other areas and other jurisdictions. And so we got to visit Jefferson County Parks and Open Spaces, Alderfer Three Sisters Park, where they've done several hundred acres of treatment over the years. This area is outside of or immediately in Evergreen, the community of Evergreen. This is a very densely populated wildland urban interface. And because it is a park with trails, they met with some initial challenges with perceptions from the public, and particularly because there are residents that adjoin the property and had concerns about trees in their view shed being removed. And so they talked about their successes around having early and frequent conversations with each individual resident that lived near there, and doing that work early to gain trust, and how they worked with each landowner to ensure that they understood the values and the opportunities, and then listened to their concerns and made some adjustments based on that. The second one was Genesee Open Spaces projects in their residential areas. That gave another perspective, much smaller scale projects, where for them a large project may be 14 acres. So they're, rather than hundreds of acres, doing a few acres at a time, often handwork with their own crews, rather than bringing in advanced equipment. And then also Mount Vernon Clubhouse was another view opportunity in the Clear Creek watershed, that you can see there in the background how dense the forests are leading up to the city of Denver. That's looking eastwards towards Denver. And so being able to do this work, and how we have similar challenges with public perceptions, yet along the Front Range, the lack of access to industry that can utilize the wood increases our our costs in a way that other parts of the state don't have to contend with. And so we aren't able to treat as much with the same amount of money, and how that is a huge challenge, particularly when it comes to reimbursement-based grants and finding match and all of those things. So a lot of things to discuss, and we will be sharing these slides. There's more notes within the slide deck that we don't have time for, so I'll encourage each of you who would like to dive in a little deeper to look at the notes within the slide deck. So I'll have you, John, go ahead and advance to the next slide. The afternoon was a storytelling workshop, The Power of Storytelling for Forest Management Communications. Go ahead and click. Similarly, we had about 50 people. A lot of them were carryover from the field tour, but we had some doing just the morning and some just doing the afternoon. So we had about 35 agencies represented within this workshop. And we had presentations from advertising specialists that have been working with the U.S. Forest Service that did a research study in 2024 of 3,000 participants, all living within U.S. Forest Service regions 1 through 6. There were 3,000 respondents, and 9 out of 10 say that forests are key to personal happiness. 8 in 10 support wildfire management. These are really important numbers to keep in mind when we are concerned about public buy-in. There is power in stories because of how they're more memorable. And it also gives us an opportunity to align with the values and how the values benefit individuals. So 2/3 of people in the wildland urban interface, or the WUI, don't know how to protect their properties. And so these are important things to keep in mind, that they're in support. The vast majority of people are in support of this work, but don't either know how or what to do. And some don't have the resources for it. And so when we're communicating, the words matter. Stories are more memorable than just facts alone, and positive messages are more effective than the fear-based ones. So again, there's more details within the notes about both the research as well as additional elements that were reported on in this. So go ahead and advance to the next slide. And part of that afternoon workshop was also utilizing a storytelling model called the 7-point structure, developed by a fictional writer, but it is a model in which we can also adapt to our forest management strategies to engage the community, to create more compelling stories in which they'll be memorable and want to and feel motivated. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but this particular model was adapted by graduate students doing their communication capstone, and did it on behalf of the Upper South Platte landscape and similar landscapes in the ponderosa pine forests of the Front Range. So John, you can click through these. Basically each point having an element relating to wildfire management and prescribed fire. So from this, participants were able to have time in which to engage with the topic of their own interests and work in a group to think about how they could utilize this for structuring storytelling and communication as professionals engaging with the community or internally with their own decision makers and that sort of thing. So I'm going to pause there to give an opportunity to move to the next topic, but if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take those at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Audrey. Chaska.
Hi all, thanks for having me. My name is Chaska Waiwaka. I am a program manager at the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute. I'm going to tell you about the session that I helped coordinate along with Jonathan Bruno of Coalitions and Collaboratives and Laura Hickey with CDR Associates. Go ahead. Thanks. So the goals of this session were for participants to hear about themes emerging from recent national level discussions and explore challenges and solutions for those themes. The conversations built on two events from earlier this year, the Future of the Forest Summit, which took place in June in Boulder, and the 9th American Forest Congress, which took place in July in Washington, D.C. And so the major themes that were coming out of those larger discussions were then used to frame up the in-depth table discussions at the CFCN Summit. And that was community engagement, Indigenous partnerships, climate resilience, communication and storytelling, workforce, forest products and biomass, and collaborative resilience. And I'm going to tell you some of the highlights from those last 3 bullets with the time that I have. So in terms of workforce, a well-supported, well-trained, and retained workforce is key for making progress in forest and wildfire management. And some of the participants discussed barriers to workforce retention, which include things like pay disparities, lack of secure benefits, burnout, unsupportive work environments, insufficient funding, and probably most importantly, according to these participants, limited access to housing. Retention to in the workforce is vital. They mentioned training is valuable, but experience is crucial for skill building and trust building, and that can't be developed through training alone. Participants emphasized that the importance of a supportive work environment that fosters recognition and camaraderie, enables flexible staffing, benefits, invests in well-being to support quality of life, and the need for career continuity mechanisms that create pathways from training to employment to leadership. Next slide, please. For the topic of forest products and biomass, participants discussed how forest health and local economies are deeply connected and emphasized the need to make biomass utilization both feasible and profitable. Emerging products such as biochar, mass timber, wood straw, small diameter wood goods show promise in turning byproducts of forest management into marketable materials, as well as advancing wildfire mitigation and carbon goals. But transportation costs, high diesel prices, limited processing infrastructure, and air quality permitting challenges continue to limit utilization. So participants pointed to flame cap kilns and small-scale biochar product technologies that could reduce emissions and create new local business opportunities if regulations were more flexible. And they also called for state-level incentives and policy innovations, including a Colorado-made forest products tax credit, low-interest loans, and value-added producer grants to strengthen the economic backbone of the industry. And all agreed that sustained investment in local processing capacity, workforce training, long-term market development, along with clear state policy support would be key to long-term success. Next slide. Lastly, the theme of collaborative resilience in times of change. Participants acknowledged that funding uncertainty, staff transitions, and the rapidly shifting federal and state landscape of strained capacity, but said that Colorado's collaborative culture of forest management remains strong. Discussions underscored that collaborative resilience and adaptability depends on building trust across agencies and communities and creating structures for shared decision-making, even when that means ceding some control within home organizations and agencies. Participants pointed to administrative barriers and constraints on flexibility and access to funding. For example, citing a need for procedural reforms to TABOR, and noted other bottlenecks such as slow approval processes, short-term funding cycles, and limitations on contracting and coordination that can stall locally driven products even when money is available. Underscored that when budgets tighten, investments in collaborative capacity and communication efforts are often the first to get cut. And participants wanted decision makers to hear that outcomes on the ground are inextricably tied to people's capacity and the momentum they create through communication. And some tables called for exploring new funding mechanisms such as regional taxes and volunteer programs, and some of the things that Esther's going to tell you about next in terms of sustaining momentum through turbulent times. And I'm not going to have time to tell you about it, but towards the end of the session, participants heard from the regional forester, the state forester, and Allie Lurch with Director Gibbs' office about current trends and challenges for their agencies. And we're so grateful for their participation. I can send highlights from their contributions along with the slide notes. Take it away, Esther.
Thank you, Chaska. Esther.
Yeah, thanks. Can you guys all hear me?
Yep.
All right. So the summit, this like dovetails super well because our summit team partnered with work on this afternoon session as an opportunity to localize the strategies that have emerged from the work effort. And that's the idea, was to provide a through line between the state level effort and local forest collaboratives. And I want to especially thank Ben Guillon, who helped to frame this session and support it. Our table topics in the afternoon were like a World Cafe style session, and they mirrored the work priority strategies that you guys have heard about. And for each of these, we focused the discussion around current practice, scaling potential, and enabling conditions. And experts on each topic from the work group served as table topic hosts. Today, we're going to share highlights from only a few of these. We're not including the restoration economy and biomass utilization breakouts. Chaska kind of touched on some of those in a different context from the morning session, and Allison talked about those a little bit earlier. So we're going to talk about the statewide public funding breakout, where some of the key takeaways from that was that there's an estimated statewide need across all funding sources of $200 million a year for the next 30 to 50 years. And so, just thinking about how do we get to that level of funding. The existing state grant programs remain important for WORM, COSWAP, et cetera, but there's over twice as much demand versus funding for those current opportunities. The participants thought that a model like Restore could possibly be expanded to include more forest and wildfire work. You can go to the next slide, John. In the pooled public-private funding breakout, the discussion centered around there not being enough private or corporate funding to pool to address the magnitude of the need, and that we should be talking more about pooled resources, shared staffing, match, et cetera. Not that we're just going to suddenly get this huge influx from voluntary contributions from industry or from foundations grants. For the funding that can be made available, we can take a model that we know works, like Restore, and apply it more broadly, was one of the ideas. For the revolving loan bridge financing breakout, a few key takeaways. That cash flow remains a limiting factor for reimbursement-based grant-funded organization. And there was a bunch of really, when we're talking about storytelling and what resonates with folks, we had a few individuals share stories in these breakouts that were really powerful, including one executive director who put up their own house as collateral for their collaborative to get a traditional bank loan because they didn't meet the requirements otherwise. And, that should not be happening. We need to find better solutions. Cocoa and Blue Forest shared info on their bridge financing mechanisms under development and some of those already available. And we talked about how could state funding be better supporting this bridge financing need, because it's actually, you don't need that much money to bridge and to open up a lot of capacity. And one of the things we'd like to explore is support for the kind of financing that's needed through the state revolving fund or other funds that could help. Next slide. For the local public funding, a handful of jurisdictions talked about how they've had success with a variety of funding models, and others, shared their stories about constraints. And I think, it would be great for us to capture some of these stories as quotes, just like in the revolving loan piece. We had folks talked about water funds where downstream water users pay, not seeing a lot of success here in Colorado. The Trust for Public Lands is working with work on 2 new tools to help explore local public funding opportunities for wildfire and watershed risk reduction. And we're hoping that survey research can help inform further development, and they're putting together some materials to be helpful to local collaboratives. There was a separate breakout on forest improvement districts as a type of special taxing district to address forest health and wildfire issues. There are some complications which has caused them to not be, in practice yet, but there is a lot of interest in making these viable and really problem solving around the challenges that have come up around those. County level funding makes sense unless we can flex that using special districts like these forest improvement districts. Next slide. Private funding sources with water providers, industry, philanthropy are insufficient to meet the funding needs. So this is one of our big takeaways from the afternoon, that public funding sources are essential and likely as the majority funding source. So kind of focusing in on where we can get the level of funding needed for this wildfire resilience work. Forest and wildfire issues are still mostly seen as local issues. We need more statewide participation and leadership from more sectors. And we talked about how policy and land management jurisdiction is dispersed. And we also talked about how this summit, like most forest and fire events, is attended primarily by forest health and wildfire practitioners. And we need to get more insurers, builders, hospitals, et cetera, involved. Something like Water Congress, maybe a statewide wildfire Congress, or starting maybe with a special session or a side event at Water Congress that's focused on wildfire and forest health. So those were some of the recommendations coming out of the afternoon session.
Thank you, Esther and John. This has been really fascinating to get the quick snapshot. I'm wondering, we're at our time for this meeting, so we need to adjourn, but perhaps, if there's more to share, we can table the discussion for our next meeting.
Yeah, Amy, quickly, 2 things. One is I will be happy to share these slides, which contain some links and a few additional supplemental slides. As Amy mentioned, as Audrey mentioned, I'll share this with Courtney so she can share with the rest of you in the notes. We are also going to be doing a summary of the summit that we will share around, hopefully widely, that will expand on these topics in a little bit more of a more comprehensive reporting format. And we would be more than happy to come back and participate more with this committee as well, or the Forest Health Council overall, if that would be helpful.
Well, great. Well, thank you. That was an incredible amount of information. The slides will be helpful. And it's a good lead up to some of our next meetings, which I think is pulling together a lot of the presentations we've heard over the last year and deliberating a bit of, where there are recommendations that we would want to elevate to the Forest Health Council at large and move forward. Where do we want to take some of the strategies that we've been hearing about over the last year? So that's what's to come with this committee. We've had a lot of action items throughout today, so I'll work with Courtney to summarize and share links and get some information out. And we're 1 minute over, so we're going to adjourn for today. But I want to thank all of our guest speakers for being here. That was really, really powerful sessions, it sounds like, and some top-notch information. So I really appreciate it. And more to come next month. And congratulations to all of those that put on that conference. It sounds like it was a great event.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks all.
We'll see you next month. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.